Coming up on this week's pod, Jockey is seconded to Wales. There's a almost new PRA, new signings, pathway news from the Arms Park. Cardiff play Connacht again, and Wales attempt to win the wooden spoon in style. Hello and welcome to this week's Cardiff Central podcast. My name's Dan. We're Harleyless this week, but I'm joined by Fraser. Fraser, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. Thanks, Dan.
All good. A week off, and we thought it was just going to be a sort of run-of-the-mill podcast, catch up on Wales stuff, and then look ahead to the Connacht game for Cardiff. But as ever in Welsh rugby, it never stays calm for long. So this afternoon, as we're recording on Tuesday evening, it was announced that Warren Gatland has officially parted ways from his second stint as head coach of Wales by mutual agreement, according to the Welsh Rugby Union and Abby Tierney. And it's a certain Matt Sherratt who's going to step in as interim head coach. He's going to step away from Cardiff after this weekend's game at Connacht, so he's going to head out to Galway with the lads and then join up with the Wales squad at the Vale Resort on Monday and take charge of the last three games of the Six Nations before coming back to Cardiff for the run-in. Wales obviously 0 from 2 so far, lost 43-0 to France and then 22-15 against Italy on the weekend for a 14th straight test defeat. Fraser, sort of general reactions, I guess, to Gatland's departure and then Jockey stepping in.
I think it's a little bit surprising Gatland leaving midway through, and then the whole financial fandangling about that, and whether he's on gardening leave, is he officially sacked if they spent the 2 million to get rid of him, or whatever the rumors about costs and stuff. But I mean, that Italy match, I mean, we might go into it later, was fundamentally depressing to watch, and it just there's just no green shoots, and you're watching every match and things getting worse. So it was becoming somewhat untenable, I suppose. And I don't know, why would you want to watch Wales? Is that kind of you're not expecting anything different from the week before, or that difference is going to be worse? So I think I'm pretty pleased with Jockey come in. Obviously, I think that's a really sound appointment. Actually, he's obviously been involved with the Wales setup before previously, and when he came in to Cardiff, we were at really low ebb and really backs against the wall, kind of the world's all against us, and he managed to galvanize a squad and get a good feeling going at Cardiff, and that's obviously still going. And it was the fans are really galvanized at Cardiff, and I think he played obviously a big part in that. So I'm hoping that he can do a similar thing with Wales and just get them to feel good about playing rugby, maybe. Just I think he mentioned about just trying things if they're on, having a bit of fun, and just changing the mindset, because obviously tactically he's not going to probably be able to implement much. But yeah, if he can just galvanize and give a bit of energy in that team, and I think that would come across to the fans as well. We've got two big home games coming up, and I think it'd be really nice to just have a good atmosphere, even if we do get battered, which we probably will do in the remaining 3 games. But if we get battered playing some nice rugby and showing some interesting things, then I'll be happy about that. So I'm pretty pleased with that decision, and kind of surprised that it is such a sound and logical decision, I think, from the WRU.
Yeah, they're slowly, very slowly, and on surface level, making a couple of wise decisions, mostly to sort of get themselves out of messes that they've made themselves. But at least they're doing something about it eventually, I suppose. From a Cardiff point of view, I think probably some fans' natural reaction might be sort of piss off. I don't want that. Leave the Wales to sort themselves out. But I think for Jockey, obviously, it's a great opportunity to go and experience being a head coach at test level for a couple of games. He was quite clear in the press conference this afternoon at the Vale that it is just 3 games. He's no interest in the job permanently, and that he will be coming back to Cardiff. It's his first head coach role, and he's just signed a long-term deal here. And then from the club's point of view, you don't want to stand in the way of Jockey having that opportunity. It's good to get in with the WRU a bit as well. So yeah, I think that's obviously, whilst not ideal to see a head coach go in the middle for a month or so in the middle of the season, it is still a relatively positive outcome to a not ideal situation. We had a few comments. Gareth Rees-Collins on Blue Sky asked what Cardiff coaching team is going to be for the next 2 to 3 games. So as I mentioned, Jockey is coming out to Connacht on the weekend. He held training on Tuesday and will take training again on Thursday and the team run on Friday before going off on Monday. And then it's just the Leinster game that's impacted then in the second Fallow Week of the Six Nations. And the remaining assistant coaches, so Gethin Jenkins, Cornel Van Zyl, Scott Andrews and Johnny Goodridge will sort of juggle it between them. I suspect, Jockey's not exactly far away at the Vale, really, so we still have a little hand in the week and selection here and there, I'm sure, as well. And then there's some good comments. Simon on Blue Sky says, can Jockey release all our players back for the Connacht game? CF10 said, is it too early for Jockey out? But a couple of comments, Ben on Twitter, Richard Hedges on Twitter as well, and Simon went on to ask this as well. Do we think he adds anybody to the squad? Obviously, names that were left out initially, Max Llewellyn, Gareth Anscombe, Cam Winnett, as people like Jared Evans have you mentioned as well, with fly half a bit of a key position at the moment in the Wales debate. Do you see him coming in and doing that, or just working with the squad as is for now?
I think, might make one, and maybe at fly half, I can see him bringing someone in just to bolster that, because it was a mad decision in the first place, I think, to rely on obviously Ben Thomas and Edwards as like the only 2 fly halves in the squad. So I think I could see him maybe drafting in someone like Anscombe or Jared Evans, probably more likely Anscombe if he's available. But I think he's probably not going to tinker too much with the squad as it is. It'd be nice to see someone like Winnett given a chance and coming back into the team, but I think he needs to, really focus on the players that are there at the moment and galvanise them instead of creating more upheaval, which might be confusing and also like demoralising for those players who maybe like leave the squad or whatever the situation is. I think it would be a good move if he just stuck with the players he's got and just work with that. 3 games, he's not expected to, change everything. And just kind of galvanise the players that are there. I don't know. What do you think? Do you reckon it's worth bringing anyone in, or?
No, I'd agree. I like sort of generally you'd love to see like Max Llewellyn come in and start 13, but yeah, Jockey, he's not going to come in and immediately just point to players and go, "You're shit, you're shit, you're shit," and we're not picking you anymore. Like, and I think if we're perfectly honest, like, yeah, Max Llewellyn probably should be starting at 13 and Anscombe would offer more control. Is that going to be the difference between winning and losing against Ireland? Probably not, let's be fair. So, yeah, Jockey's one role there is just to get the lads who are in that squad enjoying their rugby a bit more. And the players there are much better than they're playing. Everyone agrees, I think, that Gatland was not getting that team to perform to the sum of their parts. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't bring anybody in. He's only got 5 days to work with them as it is. I think he's expecting to have 4 training sessions. So for that to be in place and then to bring new players in as well, that's just too much change in one go, I think. And Jockey's pretty good at picking up pieces as well, as he showed at Cardiff in that first summer. That was nowhere near the squad that he wanted, and he put something decent-ish together that season, at least performance-wise. So
get Dan Fish in the squad.
Yeah, I did see somebody say that he should be starting to fly half. There's the never-ending joke that one day it will actually come true as well, judging by his coaching career trajectory so far, that he will actually coach Wales at some point, and then he could well pick himself. Right, that's Jockey to Wales sorted. Just general news that we already had on the list. On Friday, before the Italy game, the Welsh Rugby Union and the 4 professional teams announced, well, I'm not really sure what they announced, really. They sort of announced that there is almost a new agreement between the 4 of them. I can't remember what they called it now off the top of my head. Is it whatever corporate jargon they decided to go for this time around? But they've announced they're almost agreed, but they're not quite agreed, but they'll be agreed soon, I think. Is that roughly what you read of it?
It seemed like it. It seemed like I'd read that press release a few months ago when they announced that they were close to confirming the PRA. So yeah, it was a bit confusing because it's obviously not set in stone. I guess there's just more agreement than there was before, which is, I suppose, it's news. It sounds obviously there's it just seems like it's more collaboration and kind of pooling of resources, and obviously Welsh Rugby Union will have more input into kind of how many minutes certain players play, where they should play, and that kind of stuff, and have more kind of involvement in the regional teams, which you can react against. But then if it's done in the right way, then it makes sense, because you want the regional teams to feed the national team as well. But obviously you don't want them Cardiff. You don't want the control and the from us taken away too much. But it's a funding agreement until 2029, and it seems like the funding will raise year after year. It's not a huge amount of money, but obviously that's a positive thing. And I think the only concern I had previously, or like when I first heard it, was obviously Gatland was still in charge, and then there's not really a director of rugby at the WRU, so it's like who are making these decisions would be my main concern. Of like, their rugby based decisions, they affect how regions play. And we have Jockey's a great coach. I love what we're doing at the moment. So who is going to be stepping in and telling him what to do? And I think that's obviously, I guess we'll find out a bit more about how that's going to work when it's officially agreed, and also who our head coach might be. So I mean, I think it's a necessary thing that needed to be changed, and if it guarantees funding, then I think that's a positive thing. And it's just that balance between, WRU involvement, but not too far, and then who's making those decisions fundamentally.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we discussed it on the pod a couple of times, but it's worth just reiterating that the wording of it is that Cardiff can refuse these requests from the WRU as well. They're not like diktats as such, and obviously there's a monetary aspect to that then as well, that we miss out on a few of the payments, but. If Cardiff are able to budget on the sort of basic 75%, and then we can choose whatever we do, then if the request is reasonable, then we can adhere to it. Otherwise, we can tell them where to go, and that won't harm us financially. That's fine. I know Richard Holland has committed to doing a supporter Q&A once it's actually signed and completed, whenever that may be. It sounds close-ish, at least, anyway. So it'd be good for him to do that and to answer questions, which I think a lot of supporters will certainly have about exactly what it means for Cardiff and our independence. But yeah, hopefully it is as is written rather than reported. I think the reporting has been a bit sensationalized around the WRU. The WRU are coming and they're taking your money and your wives and your children. But actually, it's just it does seem on the surface of it a little bit more sort of joined up, at least. But yeah, you're right that it does make a difference who's in charge, and if they're on the same hymn sheet as certainly the regional coaches as well, that we can all get the rugby side of it and player positions and player style of play moving in a similar direction. It will be of benefit to all 5 teams, really. And obviously, as much as personal opinions differ on how many teams, I think nobody wants anybody to actually lose their jobs or for anybody's team to go. So if there is any sort of possibility of getting a strong test team and 4 strong pro teams, then that should always be the primary goal. Right, the other piece of news, Cardiff announced the signing of scrum half Callum Brayley, 30-year-old Italian international, started in Bristol Academy, spent many years at Gloucester, and was actually on the pitch in 2018 in Bilbao, but we won't remind him of that too many times while he's here. He then went over to Benetton, where he qualified for Italy and won 15 caps for the Azzurri national team, before coming back to Northampton, and then was most recently at Saracens at the start of this season on a short-term deal, playing a couple of times for them. He comes in at Cardiff with Ellis Bevan away at Wales and Aled Davis injured, so he'll be vying with Johan Mulder for the 9 jersey. Fraser, decent pickup, I guess, in the circumstances.
Yeah, he seems like he's clearly a solid player. He's played some good teams. I think we are obviously lacking in scrum half at the moment, so there's absolutely no harm in giving him a chance, and I'm sure he'll do a decent job filling in for Mulder when he needs to. If that's the way it's they're gonna rotate. And then I saw him. I vaguely remember him playing for Italy, and I think it did Italy go for a period of time when they just kind of had random scrum halves who didn't sound Italian, and he was one of them. And he didn't blow me away watching him, but if you play for Italy 50 times, Italy aren't the best national team, but we are now the worst national team. So who am I to say how good Italy are or not? 15 caps, that's solid, and I think yeah, it's a good signing, and it's necessary, I think, to bolster the squad and make sure we've got that backup at scrum half for sure.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Well, that's all the news. So just at this point of the podcast, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, then feel free to like and subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to, or if you're on YouTube and enjoying our facials, then we would love you to subscribe on that as well. And you can get access to all of the other Rap family podcasts, URC, and the three other pro teams, and the guys on the main Rap who sounding increasingly despairing of the situation with the national team at the moment. I think they're running out of ways of sort of saying how bad we are, which is it's actually quite fun to listen to in its own right, really. So, for Cardiff, then getting on to on-field action as we return from our brief hiatus. We return to United Rugby Championship action on Saturday. 7:35 kickoff, I think, away at Connacht in what I'm still going to call the sports ground, unless Descom want to sponsor me personally to call the stadium that. It's a fixture that we currently on a bit of a losing streak on. We've lost our last three against Connacht in all competitions, obviously most recently a couple of weeks ago in the Challenge Cup. And we've lost our last four games in Galway. Last time we won there was back in 2017 with a Willis Halaholo brace, which we're only losing four games. We haven't won there for 8 years. I don't know, something's gone wrong with the fixture list there. So I feel like yeah, obviously it's the sort of second in this triple header installment that we've got now against Connacht, with coming up playing them again back in Galway in a couple of weeks in the quarter final. General thoughts on this one, Fraser? Be slightly different, I guess, to the last one, being in the middle of the international break.
Yeah, it's the trilogy that no one's been asking for. A second of the trilogy. I'm quietly optimistic. I mean, like they're missing some fairly key. I mean, Bundyaki obviously not going to be there. I imagine he is fundamental to the way they play, and it was unreal when we played. He played us, or they played us in the last match at the Arms Park. They're obviously missing. I think it was Prendergast, Blade, and Hansen, Mac Hansen. So if they're not released, obviously, Prendergast maybe and Blade, I don't know. But either way, that's a couple of pretty strong players. And I think any team that's like Bundyaki probably adds 50% to any team he's in. So if he's out of it, that gives us a solid chance. I know there might be some people returning from injury for Cardiff, which obviously would be positive, I think. And yeah, I think we can put out a solid team. So I have, obviously that Galway losing run's doesn't look too good for our chances, but I think showed we can get through them in the match at Cap. And I think we have a chance, and obviously Jockey will be there, so we'll have a full coaching team, which would be good. And yeah, quietly optimistic.
Yeah, so just to do sort of team news generally, as Fraser mentioned, Finlay Bealham, Bundyaki, Mac Hansen, Cian Prendergast, and Caelan Blade are in the Ireland squad, and then they've got Ben Murphy and Cathal Ford as, I don't know what they call them, like development players or something like that. Clingers on. So yeah, I think you'd expect Bealham, Aki, and Hansen to be unavailable, with Prendergast and Blade, Murphy and Ford possibly available. Cardiff then. As things stand, we believe the injury list to be Domachowski, Ed Byrne, Liam Belcher, Ali Davis, Tina Stabia, Mason Grady, Ewan Stevens, Theo Cabango, with Kieran Azarati, Evan Lloyd, Teddy Williams, James Botham, Talupi Falatau, Ellis Bevan, Ben Thomas, and Josh Adams all on Wales duty. A question mark over what on earth has happened to Louis Hennessy, who never actually seemed to come back after that one game. I haven't seen him in training or anything, so just assume that he's just never came back from Bath. Really, they just kept him forever. I haven't kept up with their Prem Cup stuff, but I assume he's been featuring him in field for them the last few weeks. So maybe they didn't want to send him back on our bench and rather him play for their team in the Prem Cup. But the good news is that Ben Donnell, Gwilym Bradley, and Harry Millard have all been in training in the last 2 weeks and appear available for selection this weekend, along with Callum Brayley. So, yes, like particularly, I think Donnell and Millard being back is a big boost to the respective positions, and Gwilym Bradley, like just great to see him back fit again after just sort of injury after injury for him. But I wonder if he might maybe turn out for the Rags once or twice to build up some of that resilience to playing again before stepping into first team consideration. So team wise, where do you want to start, Fraser? Any position?
Should we start with the pack, or what? I've got an idea of what it could look
Yeah,
like.
go on. You run through your pack.
So I'm thinking, what, tight head, probably Reese Litterick.
Mm-hmm.
I think would start. I think maybe give Ethan Daniel a start at hooker, because he's obviously come off the bench a couple of times coming back from injury. So maybe this is the time to give him a decent 50 minutes or something like that. And then Lou said obviously Barrett Domachowski's injured, so I think Barrett would come in, and he's been really solid in the games he's played. He looks kind of better and better each game he plays. So I'm looking forward to seeing him develop again.
Mm.
And then second rows, I'm reckoning, Josh McNally, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't really need to say that. I'm thinking probably Seb Davis accompanying him in the second row, unless Jockey does release Teddy Williams, which would be
Fingers
nice.
crossed.
Yeah. I know I'm thinking, I mean, obviously, yeah, Ben Donnell's back, but I think Alex Mann, Big L, Thomas Young, I think, and we were talking about Thomas Young, maybe this is being his last season. We don't know yet what his contract runs out. I think it would be, if he's fit, we got to play it, make the most of him. He's been a brilliant player for us. So I'd probably go for him over Dan Thomas for this game.
Yeah, that's I don't disagree with any of that, to be honest, which isn't great for podcast debating or anything. But yeah, I think that is a pretty good pack for us in the international window. To be fair, with a couple of injuries thrown into that as well, and with a bit of depth as well. We'll get onto the bench as well, but some actual selection decisions, even if that's probably like an obvious first choice, there is at least something for Jockey to consider around Dan Thomas, around Danny Southworth at loose heads, and Donald coming straight back in as well. You got Mac Martin hanging around as well. So yeah, there's a couple of good names there. Have you got a backs selection as well?
I do, yeah. Johan Mulder,
Yeah.
I think, as you mentioned, at the last game he played, he kind of showed. I think he showed us that he's more than capable at this level, and I think there was some doubts about whether he was at URC standard. And I think he really did come, show the best of himself. So yeah, definitely Johan Mulder. Obviously, we don't have many swim halves anyway, so but Johan Mulder's start. I think Sheedy. I've got Jennings at 12. Obviously, again, it'd be nice Beetham to give in a go there, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I think Jennings and then Lilo, obviously at 13. And then, do we know, is Tom Bowen going to be released for the under-20s?
No, it doesn't look like. I didn't see him in training in the clips this week. So the wingers, you've got Millard back fit, Regan Grace, and Gabe Hamer Webb as three senior wingers, and then you've got Winnett and Beetham then at full back.
So I think I'd go with Hamer Webb and Regan Grace on the wings, because obviously Millard's just come back, so I imagine they don't want to throw him in to start. And then Cam Winnett at fullback, because he's brilliant. And I would love to see Beetham play, but it's kind of tricky to fit him in, as we've kind of discussed. But yeah, I think that would be my backs. I don't know what you think about the wingers and whether you would bring in Millard to straighten the.
No, I agree. I think we'll do the bench in a second now, but I'd probably put Millard on the bench for this one, where he can step in at centre as well if need be, and I think he'd be ideal for the 23 jersey probably for this one. I think my only query maybe is I'd love to see Beetham go into 12, but I agree I think it's almost certainly going to be Jennings when the team's announced. But I wondered if they might put him at fullback for this one, just where. I just had a quick look at the weather, and it's not for Galway anyway. It's not too wet and it's not too windy, but I wonder if they're expecting it's still going to be it will have been raining quite a lot, even though at the moment it's showing as dry on Saturday night, and there's always a bit of a breeze down there. If there's going to be quite a tricky kicking game, as good as Winnett is in the air, Beetham obviously is just naturally taller, and his big boots. So, but Yeah, I think that's pretty much a 50-50 between those two as ever. So yeah, I'm happy to stick with Winnett in that one, and then obviously beat them on the bench then as well. I'd have thought with the sort of lack of outside backs really available. So bench then sort of picks itself to a degree. Dav Hughes, obviously the replacement hooker. Danny Southworth, the replacement loose head, and Will Davis King, the replacement tight head. Um, I suppose the question for bench, if we're saying that Donnell is fit, is do you go seven-story Rory Thornton in the 19 jersey, or do you use Donnell as your second row cover and then have somebody like Dan Thomas or Mackenzie Martin or even Lucas De La Rua as your back row cover? What do you think on that?
It's tricky. I think because I feel for Rory Thornton if he wasn't given a start like a bench place because he's I mean obviously he's a solid club player and if Bendol just like as soon as he comes back goes straight in, I don't know if that might be a bit demoralising for Rory Thornton, but obviously it would be good to see Donald play again and be back on the pitch. I'm kind of torn. I have Rory Thornton on there, but I don't know. What do you think in terms of that selection?
I've penciled Thornton as well, just on the basis of in the same way that high ball and kicking is key in Galway, also set pieces as well, where it's tricky
Yeah,
weather. And I think Thornton line out presence in that last sort of 15 to 20 minutes where fingers crossed we're right in the game or potentially holding on to a lead. That just having somebody who can secure your own line out ball there is really important. So yeah, I'd go Thornton and then probably Donald then in the 20 jersey and use Alex Mann as your open side cover, which isn't necessarily ideal, but yeah, a fetcher isn't always necessarily needed in Galway, where maybe being a bit more physical and hard over the ball is as important there. So
yeah,
yeah, that's what I go for there. And then obviously Brayley is the scrum half cover,
yeah.
and then Beetham in the 22 and uh, Millard in the 23, unless I'm missing anybody, which I can't think off the top of my head.
No, I think that's bang on. Yeah,
So the Cardiff team that we have predicted slash selected to face Connacht on Saturday then. Rhys Barrett, Evan Daniel and Rhys Litterick up front, Seb Davis and Josh McNally in the second row, Alex Mann, Al Lawrence and Thomas Young in the back row, Mulder and Sheedy at half back, Jennings and Ray Lilo in the centre, and then Regan Grace, Gabe Hamer-Webb, and Cam Winnett in the back three, with Dav Hughes, Danny Southworth, Will Davis King, Rory Thornton, Ben Donnell, Callum Brayley, Jacob Beetham, and Harry Millard on the bench. That's not bad for a Cardiff International period 23. Good balance, sticks with the sort of style of play, I think. I prediction wise, rather than a specific score or anything, I suppose the first question is what would you be happy with if somebody offered you now? What would you take from this one?
I'd take a losing bonus point in Galway. I think I'd be happy with that. But yeah, like you said, that is quite a solid team, and I think that like a lot of these players have had a bit of rugby or like had experience in different games this season, and I kind of trust in their capability. And people like Barrett have come through and have shown that they've got more than enough quality to be in that squad. So yeah, I think there's a few people who've kind of got better over the season, and I feel more confident in that as a second team or like an international break team. So I don't think we're going to nick it, but I wouldn't be shocked if that did happen. I'd be delighted, but I wouldn't be shocked. But yeah, I think realistically, I think taking a losing bonus point in Galway would be good for me. What do you reckon?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think there's a losing bonus point we took from the home game last year. So just in terms of that matching up points tallies and that sort of thing, I think doing that away from home would be important. And yeah, if somebody offered me a losing bonus point now, I'd take it no question. If somebody said two losing bonus points and we scored a bunch of tries as well, even better. But yeah, I agree though that team can win. There is enough quality in that team against the Connacht, Sean of their top guys. If we're really serious about playoff contending and we're really serious about showing genuine progression this season and not just sort of settling for how well the first half of the season went and trying to kick on the second half of the season, then kicking off with a win here would be great. And hopefully we use the jockey news today as a bit of inspiration as well. You know, the players sort of sending him off to Wales in style with a win over an Irish side in his back pocket before playing Ireland next week, and maybe a couple of them thinking, you know, if I play well here and there's an injury or two in the Wales squad over the next few weeks, then jockey will have me at the front of his mind really as well, going sort of putting aside any Cardiff bias, just as somebody who he knows and is seen to be in form. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can go our way, but obviously always tricky in Connacht. Never one to sort of chalk up as a definite win. They're a tricky side to play at all times. So it'd be a good game though, I think, and that'd be important as well to enjoy some entertaining rugby involving the team we're actually supporting rather than what we had over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Right, just to finish on the Cardiff bit then with the sort of rags/pathway bit. I was at the Arms Park on Saturday evening after the Wales game. I'm still cold. I can't just. And it obviously was cold, and the forecast was cold. It was my mistake. I was just wearing a t-shirt, jumper, and a coat. I should have layered up. But at least I wasn't the bloke sat in the south stand behind me who was wearing just an Italian rugby jersey and shorts. Now I don't know. I assume he's currently in hospital with hypothermia or something like that. So, but yeah, I'm not sure what his thought process was. But it was a freezing evening at the Arms Park as Cardiff welcomed
Yeah.
RGC and Super Rugby Cymru. We lost to them the week before in the cup, but welcomed a few guys back. A couple of academy guys in Joe Cowell and Lucas De La Rua coming in, which helped, and the experience of Jason Harris in the centre as well. Uh, RGC, always a tough team to play against, obviously, with their sort of slightly exaggerated semi-pro sense, where the couple of guys are sort of on like senior academy deals there. They're a team that can match us physically, but maybe a little bit individualistic in their style of play. It was very sort of one-up runners sort of battering you down. They had an inside centre wearing the 27 jersey, which always like that worries me that he can't fit in the 12 jersey. So how big is he? Who was just, I mean, he looked like an 8 who just turned up to play in the centre.
Oh, wow.
But Cardiff dealt with them very well, to be fair. Quick start, let them back into the game a little bit, but then second half really took chances very well. And particular to note, Matty Young, the academy fullback, returning to fitness, he played superbly. Really is one to watch. I think hasn't massively been heralded coming through the pathway, but he's tall, good under the high ball, good boot, and it's just a really like rangy runner, sort of Blair Kinghorn-esque in the way that he just sort of escapes people without looking obviously fast or evasive in the way that he runs. And he also, I don't know what the SRC rule is, but the clock shows a 20-second countdown on the conversion, which seems a remarkably short amount of time. But Cardiff scored a try in the right-hand corner, and in the process, Josh Thomas, the fly half and goal kicker, got absolutely nailed whilst giving the last pass, and has got no breath left in his body at all. So Ethan Lloyd, the scrum half, is lining up the kick, and then the call comes from the stand that Matty Young should take it. So he runs 20 yards from the halfway line. There's 5 seconds showing on the clock at this point. He puts the tee down about 2 meters wider than he needed to, with the ref telling him, no, it's here. And he goes, I've got time. So he puts it down a couple of meters in for the touchline, steps back and absolutely nails this conversion right through the middle of the post. So maybe you can give some pointers to Callum Sheedy about touchline conversions there as well. But yeah, that was. But just generally, he was superb, and it was a particularly good win. They dealt with Derek Ross went off early. Alan Rees was off before halftime as well, the hooker who's been really influential this season, and then Joe Goodchild um, got injured in the right-hand corner, stood back up, received the pass to score a try, and then immediately went off because his foot was hanging off. So yeah, to lose a couple of key guys and still get a bonus point win is really good for them. And then the under-18s have been in action as well with narrow losses against the Ospreys and the Dragons. I think both games were 3-point losses over the last week. As I said before, it's not always about results at that level. If you look at the team that played the Ospreys in particular, it was missing a bunch of guys who were involved with the Rags and a couple of injuries as well. I think they've given everybody in that squad a bit of game time, so that's important for seeing who is going to be the next players coming through off the rank, and I noticed the club have been announcing a couple of very young guys, sort of 15, 16-year-olds on scholarship deals as well the last few weeks, which is good to see that the sort of new appointment who's dealing with that transition phase, 14, 15, 16, and the sort of long-term planning of the academy is kicking in well, and hopefully these guys can in a couple of years be knocking on the door of the first team. So good stuff pathway wise. Cardiff are playing again this weekend. I think it's back to cup action.
So
Which
we're now top of the league, right? A Super Rugby, can we
uh,
technically top of the league? Is that
I think we
correct?
might be with other teams with game in hand. I think is the asterisk.
You got to celebrate the small
Yeah,
victories.
we'll take it where we can, but it keeps
Yeah,
us right in the hunt. Certainly,
yeah.
Cardiff's next game is this weekend away at Bridgend, Saturday afternoon at 2:30 kickoff at the Brewery Field. So get along and support them if you fancy a trip to the brewery. Right. Finishing the pod then this week, we'll brave the international action. As I mentioned, it's been a 43-0 and 22-15 defeats for Wales so far at the hands of France, and then Italy to leave us staring down the barrel of a second successive wooden spoon. I don't know, try and put a positive angle on it. Is there anything you've enjoyed from Wales over the last two games?
Uh, well, we scored two tries
There we
not
go.
yesterday,
Take
on
that.
Saturday, which is good. Teddy Williams came on,
Mm.
and he looked he looked good. Well, he was part of the resurgence in inverted commas that made it, brought us back within 7 points. I think Wainwright, when he came on against us, he looked really. It looked like back to that kind of Australian the summer. Like he looked like a world beater. So I mean, there's glimmers. Well, they're really small glimmers of hope. Really, Falatau didn't get injured. That's never positive.
That's where we are.
Yeah, he didn't have the best of games, and he made some like silly penalties and stuff. But like he survived the game, and he carried quite a lot and got involved a lot. So I think that is positive, and hopefully, I think he actually looked like lacking match practice. And usually when he comes back in, or like that, him and someone like Warburton, they'd come back in and be like on it. I think he looked a bit slow and off the pace. So hopefully against Ireland, he's got a couple more weeks to build that fitness and, touch wood, not get injured. And he might be even, build on that performance again. I mean, there's very little positives. I mean, I feel really sorry for Ben Thomas. I think he's been given, a really poor situation to deal with, because the way we were playing is kind of confusing to watch. I don't know what his role was. His kicking wasn't great, and he didn't play well against Italy. But the way he was put into situations that he had to like make decisions in, and then what were we planning to do on like phase plays and stuff like that? Is I know there was that one. I don't know if you've seen the video of him receiving the pass off. I think it was Tompkins and getting tackled immediately, and then
Yes,
you can
yeah.
see him kind of like shouting at Tompkins like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Uh, so yeah, I felt pretty bad for him because he is a brilliant player at 12, and I'm sure he could be a really decent 10. I don't think that's beyond him. But if you're putting him in that situation and not having a cohesive attacking plan, or whatever the cohesive attacking plan they had was clearly like it's like a plan that was made by like a sixth form team in like 2007 or something like that. It's like so dated, and the way they play is just so predictable. It's kind of like crazy that we're doing it. So it's very depressing. But I mean, I know the main uptick is that obviously Jockey's coming in, and I'm going to that match against Ireland in a couple of weeks, and I think there will be a better atmosphere. And regardless of the result, I think we will probably get battered. Ireland looking really, really solid. Well, better than solid. They're looking really good. Um, Even if we do get battered, I at least think there'll be better play from the team in general. Maybe taking a few risks, seeing some intricate passing. I don't know, and just like being allowed to play with some freedom and maybe a little bit more positivity in the group. So I'm looking forward to seeing what impact Jockey can have. As we know, he can make a big impact on a team at at the end of their tether. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But I don't know, what do you think? Have you seen any glimmers of of hope in that?
No, nothing. To be honest, I just on the Ben Thomas stuff. There's there was a few comments, and after the game on social media, and I get that like fly half is a key position. It's sort of like quarterback-esque, and everybody talks about quarterbacks and stuff after the Super
Yeah,
Bowl on Sunday and that. But and particularly in Wales, the 10 jersey has such a thing around it. So many legends, so much history there. But I just think that people sort of going out of their way to criticize Ben Thomas on social media and saying, "Oh, we have to start with Dan Edwards and stuff." It's a bit like sort of sitting in a lifeboat watching the Titanic sinking and going, "Well, I didn't really like the wallpaper in the dining room, to be honest." Like, unless you're like, there is no 10, and Dan Edwards, there's one, but I'm talking like even like prime Anscombe,
yeah,
prime Stephen Jones or James Hook or anybody like that. No 10 of the past 20 years, other than maybe Dan Bigger, who had a very special talent for doing this, that could play behind that pack on such back foot ball and sort of do anything. And you're right, the attacking game plan is I mean, Rob Howley has obviously had this idea for like two pods in the middle, and I think there's a clip of Ben Youngs explaining it very well of what they're doing, just sort
yeah,
of going back side to side, and that's his plan, and that he's sticking to that plan. Like that, this is the plan I made once, and we will not be deviating from this. So yeah, you're right. Ben struggled, but any 10 would struggle there, other than Bigger, who had this sort of innate ability to look decent off back football, which made him such a special player.
yeah,
And we're not going to produce Bigger all the time. There wasn't any other 10s around even when Bigger was playing who could do that. I challenged even a Bowden Barrett or Dan Carter to sort of play behind such a well-beaten pack and make something out of it. So
yeah,
yeah, that's my general Ben Thomas take. But yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is the defense has had a bit of criticism. I actually don't think it's been actually that bad as such. There's been no obviously easy tries as like some of the French ones. There's a lot of space for those cross kicks in behind, but when you're being so badly beaten up front, that those spaces will appear, and I've sort of got question marks about how Dupont gets so much space with those forwards that stand in front of him, and in my
yeah,
mind, obviously obstruct the defensive line from getting to him. But yeah, I just think that the issue with the defense has been we're just doing way too much of it. That's really it. If you're going to be defending for that long in games and be without possession and giving possession up in such good position of the field for the opposition, they will score points.
yeah,
That's just the way it goes. But I think shape-wise, it's been all right, and you can't fault the commitment of the players at all, despite what is obviously not a happy camp, and they're not receiving the level of coaching they should be at a test level. They continue to go out, and Jack Morgan obviously epitomizes just the sort of never say die attitude that those guys are putting out there. Some of the numbers have been quite remarkable from Morgan in particular, but from all of the players really. So
yeah,
that's the one thing I would say. But yeah, Jockey, as you said earlier, he's not going to be able to work wonders tactically and stuff. But if he can empower the players to play it as they see it a bit more, to show off some of their skill sets, to not worry too much about rigidly sticking to any. Maybe that's the tactical overhaul, is to just sort of not put too much tactics on them and take stuff off them and just let them play a bit. And yeah, they'll
yeah,
make mistakes on the back of it, and there might be an intercept or there might be sort of cheap possession given up, but at least they're trying something rather than 2-3 phases of being battered behind the gate line and then just kicking the ball away for no apparent reason. So
yeah. That's what I think. That has been a sad thing. Is like, yeah, they're not even doing interesting plays that result in a knock on, or like
yeah.
uh, just yeah, an interception or something like that. You're just seeing the same thing done over and over again. Lose possession, give away penalties, and it's just like, yeah, it's just really sad. I watched it with my mate, and it was just he's not a big fan of rugby, but it was just depressing and like really boring. It was also a shit game. Italy were
Yeah, it
fucking
was.
rubbish as well. They should have beaten us much more soundly. The amount of penalties we gave away in that, like from 40 to 60 minutes, we seemed to just be like, I think we gave away a penalty every time we get the ball, or it was just madness. But yeah, hopefully they'll have a bit more freedom to try things, because I think that the idea that I think the players are good enough, there are good players in that squad, and they should be playing better than that based on their ability. It's not because they're not good enough and they can't do certain things or they've got limitations in their play. They're all world beaters. They're not like, world class players, all of them. But there's enough quality in that squad, even with the selections that Gatland made that you might question, that you can do better than that for sure, and like come up with some good tries and good plays. I think that I have faith in the squad as players, and hopefully, Jockey can get that out of them.
Do you think with Ben Thomas, obviously we'll stick with him as the Cardiff angle, but uh, just sort of general selection wise from Jockey as well, does he sort of bring in the selection that he's spoken about before with Cardiff, and so therefore does Ben Thomas shift to 12, and then maybe you see a Joe Roberts or even an Eddie James potentially outside centre? It's not somewhere he's played at senior rugby, but he pretty much exclusively started there for Wales under 20 when he was at that level. So it's sort of, does he like copy and paste that? You know, you've got your 10, who's your playmaker, you got your 12, who's your football in 12, second playmaker, and then more of a strike runner at 13? Or is that just sort of too much of a risk and maybe too exposed defensively? So he goes a bit safer and sticks with an Eddie James at 12, and then maybe like a Joe Roberts at 13, as who is actually at 13 rather than like trying to stuff Nick Tompkins as a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, I think he might go with Eddie James because I don't. I think because Ben Thomas can play at 10. I think, and Jockey must knows that, and I don't know how good. I don't. It's tricky, but yeah, I think maybe stick with the Eddie James. He can play. He's got good hands. He's got a good kicking game. He's not a Ben Thomas, but he's got the capacity to do a bit of footballing skills at 12. And trust in Ben Thomas. It'd be nice to just like show that we have faith, and there could be a future at 10 if he wanted it, if he really focused on it, because it would feel quite a sad thing to do to just take that off him, and you can't do that because Dan Edwards is still so young, and it's like you're replacing Ben Thomas as someone who's like got such little experience at international level, and that. So I think I would advise, probably to try Ben Thomas again at 10, and then Eddie James, like you said, and I think Joe Roberts at 13 would be good. I don't dislike Nick Tompkins. I don't want to like slag off a player for no reason, but like he was poor, and I just I don't know. He's never inspired faith in me when I've seen him play, and just give Joe Roberts a chance. It doesn't. I think we've got 3 hits for the last 3 games. No one is expecting anything from us. We're expected to lose each of them. Why not? Give Joe Roberts a chance at 13 and like experiment in that sense and see what he can do. Because I don't see any harm, and I don't see the point in giving. We know what Tompkins can do. There's no discovery there.
I agree, and I think with Eddie James staying at 12 as well, we'll obviously discuss the Ireland game next week and stuff, but Sam Prendergast was great against Scotland on Sunday with ball in hand, looked really good in that game. But I think it was 5 missed tackles. He's finished with his stats was. So, I mean, if I was Jockey or slash whoever's going to be running the attack, depending on who his assistant coaches are, I think my first play of the game would be sending Eddie James straight down Sam Prendergast's channel and really testing out what his defense is like there. Because Eddie is obviously a very large individual, as well as having a good set of hands. That's what he does have over Ben Thomas in that 12 jersey, that he is a very physical ball carrier. I suppose the other question then on Wales is the Jockey made it very clear that he was coming back to Cardiff afterwards. So with that still being a vacant position then as Wales head coach, is anyone you particularly fancy who they might be able to get after? Because I think just generally, obviously it's a shit show at the moment. Like Welsh rugby is awful, and the Welsh Rugby Union is not particularly covering itself in glory at every opportunity. But it is still a tier 1 head coaching job and a head coaching job in the Six Nations, and they don't come around particularly often in this sport with such a small pool of real top nations. So there is still that element of attractiveness for a coach, I guess, and who might see a rebuild and some talent coming through. Is there anyone you fancy in particular?
I think firstly I'd try and avoid Michael Checker or Eddie Jones. I don't think it don't go hark back to those kind of world class coaches of before. No, I have nothing against Australians, by the way, but I would be a bit yeah, I would be disappointed if that was the way route they were going to go down. I think, like you said, I think it's a really attractive proposition. You're going to get paid a lot of money. Wales are in the doldrums, so there's still money enough to pay a good coach to come in. You're starting at zero. Like, there's the expectations have been crushed into the ground. Like, we've probably going to get 2 wooden spoons. So you come in from a really low base, so you can only improve. And yeah, I think there is a good players in there. And I think with hopefully with the changes in the PRA and like the shift in the WRU, you're seeing in the future, the next couple of years, there's going to be a more positive outlook in Welsh rugby, like, touch wood. So I mean, obviously seeing someone like Ronan Ngara would be really fun. He's already said he doesn't want it. But that, people say stuff like that all the time. It
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily isn't necessarily true. I mean, not for now, but I've always, and this might be sacrilege because he's the coach of Ospreys, but I've always been impressed by Mike Jones as a speaker. Like when I've heard him on like Scrum 5 and he's like been around the world with coaching, I think he's someone in the future maybe to reach out to. But again, surprisingly, WRU has mentioned Franco Smith and Simon Easterby. I would be happy with either of those coaches coming in, to be honest. Obviously, Franco Smith's done wonders with Glasgow, winning the URC, playing good rugby. Simon Easterby has obviously been a part of the island setup for years and then has coached in Wales. And I think he lives in Wales, I found out today, which I didn't know. But giving Simon Easterby a chance would be really interesting to see how he can utilize this, like the learnings he's had with like Schmidt and now Farrell. That's quite an exciting prospect, and then he'll obviously put his own take on it, which I'd be like, that would be really exciting if Simon Easterby got the job. I would be quite excited about that, even if he's not like a big name or anything like that. But I don't know if you got any people you got an eye on or think would be a great appointment.
I agree with exactly 100% agree what you say that we need not necessarily like a younger, but certainly like a more modern, forward thinking coach. Like that has to we picking somebody based off like past successes, like particularly Eddie. That that time has come and gone now. It's definitely somebody who can demonstrate success like very recent success
Yeah.
and a style of play in that as well. I generally generally like an attack-minded head coach. Just sort of the way I like to see it set up is somebody who's a bit more attack-minded there, and then they have a very good defense coach with them. So I think Franco Smith would be perfect for that. Like I said, like that Glasgow team have played really well. He's had international experience before with Italy. Seems like he probably will be available come the end of the season. I think there may be a feeling from him that he's probably taken that Glasgow team about as far as they can go, and that it's time for something new there as well. So that would be interesting. But I certainly wouldn't be against Simon Easterby if he brings them with him. If he gets the attack coach, because he's more of a defense guy. If he gets that attack coach appointment right and is happy for them to sort of run that and rather than and making us too overtly defensive, then his CV is great and yeah, he is lives in Wales. He's a current father of a Cardiff under 16 South player. His lad is in the squad this season. As him and Sarah live in the Vale, I think, so he was in the Vale school squad earlier in the season. So I don't know whether that would help us at all. I feel like I would just refer to him exclusively as Cardiff under 16 South parent Simon Easterby as Wales head coach. But yeah, there's loads of interesting names. I think even somebody who's a little bit older but has still got a good track record and is a sort of progressive coach is like a Jamie Joseph from New
Yeah.
Zealand, done a good job with
Yeah.
Japan. Pat Lam is spoken about quite a lot, being quite close to Bristol. I don't know whether he would leave Bristol, and obviously a lack of test level experience there would be a bit of a question mark. But certainly the way Bristol play, I think, would suit some of the players that we've got coming through the pathway, with a sort of less about all out physicality and more about high skill level and tempo that you're playing at. So yeah, it's actually a good time to be going to the market, I think, for the WRU for a head coach. There's lots of good options out there. Lots of people. There hasn't been much coaching changes at that tier one level for a while. Teams have had the same coach since at least the last World Cup, but even during that cycle, France uh, Townsend, Farrell, they've all been there for quite a while. The New Zealand ones are quite scripted in who's coming next. They've always got somebody in the pipeline, so there's not much of an opportunity for that job. Obviously, South Africa, we've had Razi Erasmus for a long time as well. So, yeah, there hasn't been much opening other than the Australia job and now us for a little while. So there's definitely guys there who will be chomping at the bit to step up, I imagine. And fingers crossed, the WRU roughly follow what they've done with getting Jockey in interim and getting Sean Lynn in as the Wales women's coach and make a smart appointment. But I think the other thing just to say then as well is that Abby Tierney did mention, and the media mentioned it to her in a press conference today, that the director of rugby role is as important for Wales to get right as the head coach, getting somebody in who's going to oversee all the pathways, the joined up
Yeah.
thinking, get the regions and the national team in on the same page. Somebody who can properly hold the head coach to account and give proper advice on rugby stuff to Tierney and really work with that performance department at the WIU. That is as important as the head coach coming up, I think. So yeah, that's the Wales stuff generally done, I think. Unless you've got anything else you would like to add at all, Fraser,
I
on
was just
Wales
going
or
to ask,
anything?
do you think Sam Parry will now get a game now that Gatland's gone?
It's
Will he
like,
get a chance?
do you know when they switch American presidents and there's like a note in the Oval Office drawer from the previous president, like Jockey sits down at the Vale on Monday and opens the drawer and it's just Sam Parry's a knob, love Gats. But I mean, he could. I did see somebody mention that there might be an element of awkwardness for Cardiff players because you look like Evan Lloyd. He's been chucked into a real tough situation there as
Yeah.
like an inexperienced hooker, and is like the line out hasn't been bad, and his throwing hasn't actually been that bad. It's some of the calling has been the main issue, but he's been tough going for him. Does Jockey coming in and dropping Evan Lloyd potentially harm the relationship there? And you'd hope not, but there's certainly I can see him. You could see why he would go with the more experienced D and Parry potentially for Ireland over Evan.
Yeah, you're right. Like the personal kind of relationships and how that will impact on how you're making those tough decisions or cutting players. That could potentially be a bit like
The flip side though is that at least our lads are going to play with somebody under somebody they know and are going to enjoy their rugby a bit and not be Gatlanded for a month and then come back sort of just with no hope or general confidence in themselves. At least hopefully they'll have something about them. Right. That's us for this week. We'll be back next week talking Connacht game, looking ahead to Ireland, and any other breaking news that appears between now and then. In the meantime, thank you, Fraser.
cheers, Dan.
And thank you for listening. Goodbye.